Modern Eater Network production. Hell yeah. Let's get this party hoppin'. No more milling around. Get ready to have a mash ton of fun. Here are your hosts, Andrew Moore and Jeff Tyler.
Hey everybody, welcome to Beercraft. I'm Andrew Moore with Intrepid Sojourner Beer Project, joined here with Jeff Tyler from Spice Trade Brewing Company, and we are coming at you from another installment of Beercraft Colorado's Craft Beer Show.
Yeah, because only an hour ago we were doing one show, and now we're doing another show.
We figure you're probably stuck inside your house, worried about the bomb cyclone part 2.
Yep.
And you're probably wondering, man, I wish there was more Beercraft to watch.
Yeah.
So here we are.
We're fulfilling needs here. We're really a service-based show. We want you to be happy. We want you to get all your info. And, you know, this is we're from the Craft Brewers Conference today. We're at Former Saint, this beautiful, beautiful restaurant at the Hyatt across the street from the convention center. And we have a couple great guests with us, Steven and Eric from Former Saint. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for hosting us. We appreciate it.
I love having you guys.
Yeah, this place it's gorgeous. The copper, the high ceilings, the cooler.
Yeah.
It's a really cool setting to be in, and it's so convenient for the Craft Brewers Conference, which is right across the street.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been a great meeting place for all of the brewers throughout the week, and we've been happy to host.
Yeah, awesome. And you guys have sort of a ton of stuff going on this week in conjunction with CBC. What's happening at Former Saint?
So we've been doing kind of a week of tap takeovers. Tonight is Upslope Brewing out of Boulder. Yesterday was New Belgium. They took over all 16 lines.
Nice.
Monday was Oscar Blues and the Canarchy Project, so they brought in kind of that big collaboration. And then tomorrow we have Great Divide.
Nice.
Tapping some kind of rare beers that they roll out. So.
Awesome.
Cool.
Any special rare beers you can tease us with? Come back tomorrow.
They're doing a Boneyard collaboration, I think out of Oregon. It's called Pancakes for Lunch. It's a blueberry stout.
Ooh, nice.
I haven't tasted it yet, so I'll be here as soon as we tap that to warm myself
What
a
time?
little
What's the time to be here?
bit. 11 a.m. we should be having the beer flowing.
Good. Awesome. Yeah. So you can have it for lunch.
You could actually have it for lunch. Do you guys have any pancakes that can be ordered with that?
We'll probably have some from breakfast, yeah. So if you get right at 11, it'll be right in that mid-time.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I have
That's
to do
great.
a pancake and beer quality check to start the day, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I think
quality control is an
nowhere
important
will be
part.
at 11 in the morning tomorrow.
Yeah. I'll probably be here.
Pancakes and hair of the dog.
Yeah. I think this whole week is hair of the dog, just given the number of events happening, all the happy hours, and all the seminars. You know, the Brewers Conference has a lot of great events to go out and drink, and they also have a lot of great, educational events going on. So it's a fun time to be in Denver. There's brewers from all over the state, some even from all over the world here. So yeah, it's a good time to be in town for sure. Awesome.
Well, so are you guys doing beer events? I mean, so you don't have to be in the Hyatt to come down and enjoy Former Saint. For those of you watching on Facebook, where is Former Saint? How do they get here?
Absolutely, yeah. We're at the corner of 14th, California, so all you'd have to do is finish up with your meeting at the convention center and walk across the street and come right into our front doors. So we're super close by, and like Eric said, we're pouring beer from morning
11
to
until,
night.
Yeah. Tons of great beer. How many taps do you guys have?
16 here, so.
16 taps and more on the way, I understand.
Another 24 as soon as Assembly Hall, our other lobby bar, gets open. So
nice.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Can never have too much
That's
beer.
a lot of craft. That's a lot of craft beer, and it's in this just beautiful setting.
Yeah.
I'm super jealous of all this copper piping over our heads right now.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of kind of those old school German breweries where you are used to seeing the copper kettles and the copper piping.
Yeah.
So it really has this brewery vibe to it when you walk in. So
Yeah, we get the question a lot that if whether or not we're brewing our own beer in house, and we have to always explain. We wish. If it were up to me and Eric, we would definitely be doing that. Although
I would.
I'm not sure how it would turn out, though.
Well, you got the kegs. You got the kegs over there.
Yeah, and guests are welcome to enjoy their beer inside the keg room as well. There's a table in there people can hang out.
Oh, nice.
With
Oh,
the
really?
beer.
You have to wear your jacket? What's the
That's
temperature
right.
in there?
We got jackets in there. I mean, it depends on what your tolerance to cold is. I don't think any of my local Colorado peeps need
It
to.
goes
Maybe
up
my
as I drink
Texans.
beer, actually. So that's good.
Well, it's warmer in there than it is outside right
That's
now,
a good
so it actually
point.
might be pretty,
It's a valid
pretty nice.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, worst places to be stuck.
Yeah,
In
in a cooler full of beer.
In the 9 inches of snow that I guess we're supposed to be getting.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is the light rail drops off right outside, about
Nice.
a block away. So
There you go.
you can still figure out how to get down here and enjoy some tasty beer.
I like it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for letting us crash your party. And we'll be here for the next hour and a half. We've got a great lineup. We're gonna bring on Fal Allen from Anderson Valley. I'm really excited. We're gonna talk history. We're gonna talk
Talk about
California.
Goza.
We're gonna talk Goza, of course.
Yeah.
So
dig into the beer.
yeah, thank you guys
Awesome.
so
Thanks,
much.
guys, a lot.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We're going to bring on Fal here. Come on around, grab a headset, grab a beer, fill up before you come on.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
easier if you have beer in hand. Get the handicap.
Yeah. We're good.
Good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thanks.
All right. Awesome. Fal, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I feel like a little bit like mission control.
Yeah, it
here.
is. It's a little airplane pilot-esque or sport commentator, but
Yeah, we should have like ground control to Major Tom play us in or something.
yeah, I wish we had just a big switchboard with a bunch of, like, you know all the stuff they have at Bierstadt Lager House with all the switches and the knobs?
Yeah.
I kind of wish we had one of those in front of us just to, like, mess around with.
Or like the Jim Cramer, like the Mad Money soundboard. We could
Yeah.
just make a bunch of weird noises.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, Fal Allen, thanks so much for coming on Beercraft. We're really excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're talking this week or this month specifically. We're trying to get a snapshot of the craft beer industry nationwide, and kind of see what's going on around the country. What are the trends? What are the styles that people are really liking? You know, just kind of what are people digging around the country? And so you have your brewery, Anderson Valley, is in California.
Correct.
Right, you were just explaining to me where it was, but for those of our guests who haven't heard of Anderson Valley, I don't know who of our guests haven't heard of Anderson Valley, but can you explain who you are, kind of what Anderson Valley is, how long you've been around, and kind of where you're located?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. I'm Fal Allen. I'm brewmaster for Anderson Valley Brewing Company in Booneville, California. And Booneville, as you might guess, is in the middle of nowhere, Boonies. And we're about 2 hours north of San Francisco. Part of the way to the coast, and it's a real isolated valley. It's hard to get in and out of. Roads are not very good. It's so isolated, in fact, in the 1800s, they developed their own language called Bootling.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they still speak this language?
Yeah, they harp a wee bit of the ling.
Nice.
And that's a little bit of Bootling. It used to be taught in the schools
Okay.
in the early part of last century, but it's not anymore, thankfully. There's some old timers still speaking. You still certainly see it around town on signs, and you still hear it in conversation a little bit. Bright lighters are people from out of town. Moshe is a car, and you hear a little bit of it.
Yeah. So pretty rural community out there.
Oh yeah,
Beer
very rural.
drinkers. What kind of beer do they gravitate towards?
You know, the locals mostly drink Coors Light, which is
I
a
know some
problem.
locals like that.
Yeah.
Problem for us. Great for Coors. Problem for us trying to open a brew pub there back in '87, and after a few years of being open, there's a guy, Dave Keene. I don't know if you guys know who Dave Keene is. He owns a Tornado,
Okay.
and one of the very first beer bars on the West Coast. And Dave Keene used to drive up to Anderson Valley to pick up beer to sell at his pub, and he was a big fan. And his support of our brand has got us off, and running. Because there weren't a lot of people drinking our beer in town there, and tourist season is short, and without Dave's support, I probably wouldn't have survived. But it became obvious to the owner that we needed to build a production brewery and sell beer outside of Booneville.
Right.
So we did that. We started doing that in the late 90s and built a production brewery. He got a brewery from Germany that had gone out of business, Hupman system, and brought it over, set it up there, and we started making beer and selling in other states, and now we're in 32 states and 19 other countries.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
a big footprint. I don't think I realized how many countries you guys were in.
Yeah, it's kind of, the farther you send your beer, the more you worry about it. And if we were sending our IPA to those countries, I'd be even more worried. But a lot of what we send out is our stout and our gozas, and both those beers travel pretty well.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sort of imagining the thought process. It's like 1987, right? It feels like sort of the beginning of craft beer.
Yeah.
Like we found this valley in California that speaks their own language, so they can't communicate with anyone else.
Yeah.
We should put a brew pub right here.
I didn't say the former owner was a genius, but he'd sold a building in town. And he was like, I got some extra money, and he had a partner that he took on, this guy Dave Norfleet, and Dave was like, oh, I know what we should do. We should open a brew pub. I heard about him, and the other guy, Ken, said, well, sure, why not? And we're off to the races.
Yeah.
A lot of stories kind of start that way. As a quick aside, I mean, that's sort of how our brewery came about. Spice Trade, formerly the Yak and Yeti Brew Pub. Before it was the Yak and Yeti Brew Pub, it was this English brew pub called the Cheshire Cat. And so this group of people, took on this old house. It's 154 years old, one of the original estates in Arvada, about 10 minutes away from here. And they turned it into a brew pub, English brew pub. Lasted for a couple of years, didn't quite do so well, went under. And then the current ownership took it over and put an Indian restaurant in it.
Oh, yeah.
And decided that because the equipment was still there, why not just continue to brew the beer, continue brewing beer. And so that kind of started what is now Spice Trade, and leads a lot of why we use so many culinary ingredients in our beers, because we kind of have that Indian and Nepalese influence with a lot of our original beers. But it's interesting to kind of see how those stories are not so isolated. They're kind of a similar mindset of, hey, why not?
Yeah.
And then it kind of grows from there.
Yeah, and Indian food with beer, that's a beautiful matchup.
It's a good combo. Yeah, it's a good combo.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, it's interesting because we got the opportunity to talk to Charlie Papazian earlier this afternoon.
Yeah.
And he's just releasing his little documentary for the love of craft, and it's a lot about these people that started their breweries in the late 80s, early 90s, when no one knew what craft beer was.
Yeah.
And but it sounds like you guys were sort of in the mix too, kind of figuring that out and figuring out. Do you have a sense of what that was like for Anderson Valley?
I didn't start at Anderson Valley until 2000, but I started brewing in '85 at Red Hook, and I interviewed with Charlie for his that special he's doing. I actually interviewed with Dick Cantwell, who is his kind of co-producer for that.
Yeah.
And I started at Red Hook and then moved, when Red Hook was still working out of a former transmission shop back then, and then went to work for Pike Place in, I think, 87, 88, and was with them for 10 years. So it was a very different scene back then. In the late 80s, if you went into a brew pub or a brewery, and you were lucky to get, 4 beers. They definitely would have something light, maybe amber, maybe if you're lucky a lager, something dark, stout, porter maybe, something wheat, maybe, and then you'd get, if you were lucky, something else. So IPA was, nobody was doing them, and now IPAs rule the world.
Yeah, it's like 25% of the craft beer market is IPAs.
Yeah. Oh, at least. I'm surprised it's only 25.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and then so you have another style of beer, right? That Anderson Valley is really known for, and you're really known for, the Goza, right? It's this unique historic beer, almost extinct.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we talked to Charlie about this a little bit, and he was about trends and about innovation. And I think one thing that's pretty interesting now is kind of this trend to kind of revive historic beer styles. There's a couple styles that are kind of getting revived, and I think Goza really is a beautiful, beautiful example of that, because it was basically extinct, right?
Oh, yeah.
And these two fine gentlemen on your T-shirt here, let's get a nice shot of that. I mean, those guys brought it back essentially, right?
Yeah, these two guys single-handedly brought back the style. And Goza was so popular, particularly in Germany, but throughout Europe at different periods, that it's hard to believe that a lot of us had never heard about it. It certainly is in the documentation. It's in the history books. But it had its biggest heyday probably was in the late 1700s, early 1800s. In Leipzig in particular, there were 80-something Goza taverns and several breweries making it. And there were breweries in Goslar and all the towns in between Goslar and Leipzig making Goza. And then it died out that for a lot of different reasons. Certainly partly because lagers came along, and lagers' popularity kind of eclipsed everything else. And when the Communist Party took over Germany in the 50s, that was kind of the last blow. The communists didn't want any regional items, specialty items like Goza, and they kind of squashed it. And this guy, Goldham, he decided when the communists took over, he'd been a restaurateur, and they told him, well, now you're a bookbinder. And he's like, I don't know anything about bookbinding, man. I don't want to be a bookbinder. Yeah. But, you know, you didn't have a choice. And so he became a bookbinder for a few years, and then he went on this campaign to convince them that they should allow him to open a Goza tavern. Or I don't think initially he told them what it was going to be, just a restaurant.
Right. Kind of snuck in the Goza under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, he wanted to do something that reflected Leipzig's rich history. And he ran into this other guy, Hennebach, at a flea market when he was trying to buy things to decorate his pub with. And they kind of hit it off, and Goldham became the brewer, and Hennebach became the tavern operator. And single-handedly, no one was making Goza at that point. They went out, they found old folks, you know, and asked them what the beer was like, and they found as many recipes as they could. And they went to Berlin, which was the only place that was still making sour beer in Germany, and got one of the Berliner Weiss breweries to make Goza for them. And for a few years, they did it that way.
Yeah.
And brought the style back.
I love that idea of like you're crowdsourcing a flavor profile from what people who had drank it remember about it. Like it's gone. And the only way to bring it back is to try to make something close and ask anybody who's had it before whether or not it hits and kind of tweak it from there. So really revived from extinction.
And I think really there's a lot of beer styles like that. I mean, IPA is the same way. No one was really making an IPA in the 70s. If you'd gone to England and gone into a pub in the 80s or 90s and said, hey, can I have an IPA? What you got was a beer that was less alcohol and less hoppy than, their special bitter. So that beer had essentially just gone extinct. And American brewers revived that style from, history notes and what they thought it should be like and looking at old brewing records. I think most styles we have revived that way.
Yeah. Ben, so for those of our viewers who aren't super familiar with Goza as a beer style, could you run through kind of the general, you wrote the book, this book Goza right
Literally,
here.
yes.
Literally wrote the book. Can you run people through what that style is, kind of what it tastes like, what the ingredients are, and maybe how people are making it now versus how it might have been traditionally made when the style originated?
So, one of the interesting things about Goza, and I didn't know this, I didn't know anything about Goza. When we started brewing it, we went out and found commercial examples and emulated those. And when I was asked to write the book, I did more research. And it looks like that Goza is probably the oldest beer style maybe in the world that is still being made. 1,000 years ago, there were two types of beer. There were brown beers, which are very sweet and very alcoholic. And they were brown because you used so much malt to get the alcohol, and that was their preservative. And there were white beers, and Goza falls into that category. And they were made with a technique of drying the malt, which made for a very light, white-colored beer. And those beers were often consumed very young, and if they weren't very young, they rapidly got sour. So they were often sour beers. And those were kind of the two styles back then, and other styles have been developed in the last 500 years. But Goza has this kind of continuous, life through that, 1,000 years. People were making it for most of those years. And, it died out a few times and then came back. So Goza is a sour beer, which is unusual for Germany. It's a German-style beer, and it's from that white beer family. And nowadays it's made with 50% wheat and 50% barley, roughly. And historically, that's somewhat true, although there are records of it being made with 100% wheat, which I think would be a sticky mess, as you know, as a brewer.
Yeah. Sounds like a rough day.
Yeah, we do 100% wheat beer, actually. We do a Grotzer, speaking of historical styles, and it's 100% oak-smoked wheat malt, and it is a sticky mess.
Yeah, and Grotzer's in that family of white beers, It's a Polish version of that, and so is wit beer from Belgium is in that same family of white beers. And in German, Weiss means both wheat and white. And so when they talk about a Weiss beer, particularly in the older records, they usually just mean this white beer. They didn't mean necessarily wheat. So yeah, I love Grazer. It's a great beer. And
Yeah, it's killer. And it's a little bit of a polarizing beer because you either like that smoky flavor or you don't most of the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't like lukewarm on bacon-smelling beers, but yeah, it's been a really fun style for us to play with.
Yeah, I love that style. And it's another resurrected style that had, pretty much died out. And there's more of those out there that we haven't started brewing. And, Goza just captured when we started brewing it, and we weren't the first. Westbrook certainly was before us, and I was talking to Edward Westbrook the other day, and he said there were other people before him that, he'd had. And it just kind of captured people's imagination and their palates in that. I think one of the reasons it's become so popular is because it's not IPA.
It's different, yeah. And we kind of touched on the malt profile, right? 50% wheat, 50% maybe Pilsner malt or some sort of clean base malt.
Yeah.
But then what are some other defining factors, right? There's a salinity aspect to it. It's a sour beer, so there's some acidity, and there's a couple other components that are pretty, or at least modern components that are used in the beer too, right?
Definitely the salinity is part of the flavor profile, and where that came from is debatable. Some people said it came from the water source, but I don't think so. I've been to that water source, and it wasn't minerally, much less salty. Salt adds fullness to beer, and I think that in that region where Goza developed, there were salt mines, and so salt was very cheap there, or a lot less expensive than it is in some other regions of Europe. So they used it to develop some fullness. And then it's definitely sour. Goza is definitely a sour beer. And so it's got a light, nice, refreshing acidity. It's kind of bright. It's not like a Goza, which is a wood-soured beer that is a lot more funky and complex. So it's a pretty easy drinking beer. And it's low alcohol, usually somewhere between 4 and 5%. So those are kind of its hallmarks. And traditionally, they've used some sort of mild spice with it. Coriander is the one that is mostly used today, but spruce also was used.
Yeah. That's awesome. It makes me wish I had one in front of me.
I know. We brew a Goza for one of our summer seasonals.
Nice.
And I wouldn't say it's a traditional Goza, but I love the base so much. It's called Scarlet Giant, and it's a Goza that's brewed with hibiscus, key lime, and coriander, and it's fermented with a yeast strain that we cultivated from a hibiscus flower at the Denver Botanic Gardens, which was called the Scarlet Giant. Hibiscus flower, it's like this 40-foot tall, maybe not 40 feet tall, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's like a 25-foot tall
3 feet tall
flower. Maybe. Yeah, no, they had to chop down with these giant shears to get the flower, and then we cultured the yeast.
And the flower is...
The flower is probably this big.
Wow.
On the Scarlet Giant. It's a Southeast Asian varietal of hibiscus. But it's such a good base style to add other ingredients to.
Absolutely. And that's one of, we make a unflavored Goza. It's just, straight Goza. And then the rest of we make are flavored in some way or the other. And you're absolutely right. It's a beautiful palate to put other flavors onto. I think the acidity really helps out with other types of fruits or veggies or herbs and flowers and things.
Yeah, I'm a big home cook and a big fan of just cooking and beer and food in general. And we talk about this a lot. But the two things that I love that are components of a lot of dishes, a lot of food items are salt content and acid content.
Yeah.
And because the Goza has both of those, they really can help accentuate other flavors that you would put in or help accentuate a food item that you're eating with it, right? Because it has that acidity to kind of brighten things up. It has the salt, which on a chemical level on your tongue is literally wedging open your taste buds so you can get a flood of other flavors in. So I actually think using salts in a lot of beers is a great idea to kind of help make certain flavors pop a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'm surprised we don't see that a little bit more. But I agree with you. A little bit of salt in the beer really does open things up. Certainly gives you more fullness.
Yeah, and there's a lot of salts too out there. We messed around with a lot of different types of salts when we were developing the Scarlet Giant Goza, and we settled on this really cool Utah rock salt, which is from the salt flats in Utah. And it has this cool, just like super unique mineral profile. And we tasted it and we were like, yeah, this is what we got to use in here. But I mean, you could pick sea salts from different regions. You could have Himalayan pink salt. You could have a lot of different salts that could add different flavors to the beer. So it's a cool ingredient, pretty diverse ingredient.
Yeah, I was talking to Todd Mott. I don't know if you guys know him, and he was saying he uses a barrel of salt water in his 15-barrel system. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea, way to get your salt in there. Just use salt water.
Yeah, we're talking to a brewery on the East Coast last year, I think, at CBC, and they were making gozas with oyster shells. And, like, they were getting, like, the salinity from the salt on the oyster shells by steeping them at a certain point in the process, and that's how they were introducing that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. It was this really kind of like wild, reminiscent a little bit of like seawater in a really good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. So from brewing goza to the book goza, was it something you're like, I got into this because we love brewing goza. This was sort of what Anderson Valley does, and I want to write a book, or how did that come about?
Well, I co-authored the barley wine book 20 years ago with Dick Cantwell, and so I was on the kind of the Brewers Association's radar, and when Anderson Valley Goza became so popular, it's probably about half of our sales now with the Goza production. And the BA called me up, Christy Switzer, who is the Brewers publication, she runs it, called up and said, hey, you want to write the book on Goza? And I said, absolutely.
Don't say no to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And thank you, Christy, for asking. But I had no idea what I was getting into. Anytime you write a book, I think you really don't know what you're getting into, and maybe you wouldn't have written the book if you'd known. But one of the interesting and troubling things about the Goza book is because the style is so old, I had to go back and look at a lot of historical records, and a lot of those were in German, and my German is not so great. And, the further you get back, it's not just in German, then it's in Old German, which is pretty complicated.
Where are the records? Where do you go for those?
Well, I was lucky to have run into a guy, Benedict Cook, and he is a German guy. He's writing the Berliner Weiss book now. And he was super helpful. He's German, so he speaks German. He could read German. He can read Old German. And he'd already done a bunch of research, so he was nice enough to share that with me. That was really helpful. And then I found a lot of it on my own. There's Google Books. Google has tried to get every book on the planet and scan it and put it into this library. And so that was pretty useful, and it's a very searchable database. And then there were library things that I found and that Benedict found and sent to me. And he even found things that, he would go to libraries and they would allow him to look at the books, but he couldn't take them out. And he would take pictures of them. But he got some of them home and he's like, I can't read these because not only are they in Old German, but they're like half in Old German and half in Latin.
Whoa.
Because Latin was the language that people wrote things in. And, when you think about 1,000 years ago, you forget that the printing press wasn't invented until the 1400s. So anything prior to that was handwritten. It was a book handwritten by some monk probably, and they're writing it probably in Latin. And there aren't very many copies, and each copy there is was written by some other dude probably. And so, looking back before the printing press was invented, the history gets very, very dicey and very hard to discern what was really going on.
So there's kind of some interpretation there. I mean, you're
absolutely.
you're really like a historian trying to solve. I imagine like Nicolas Cage in the depths of like trying to solve some like national treasure mystery. Like you're trying to kind of unearth this information. It's not just like you can't just look in Wikipedia and write a book about it, right? It's like a lot more in depth.
Get shot at by the Anti-Goza Foundation.
Yeah. If they made a movie about it, I think they'd have Nick Nolte play me, not anybody as glamorous as Nicolas Cage. But no, there's no cabal that came after me. But it was fun to do, and it was, it was a lot of detective work. It was a lot of searching around and looking in different spots, and tracking down things, and because the language was so different and the measurements were so different. Kind of like you said, there's a lot of guessing. You have to discern what it might have been like, or
Right.
what might have been happening.
Yeah. Have you made it to Germany to taste any of the gozas that are being made over there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I was super lucky. I got lucky throughout this whole trip. It was kind of weird. So I started talking to this guy Benedict online because he has a website, Wildervan, that is about Goza mostly. And I emailed him. He's like, "Oh yeah, well, too bad you won't be here next week because I'm going to be in Berlin." I'm like, "Well, I will be there next week." And he's like, "Oh well, we're having a gathering of craft Berliner Weiss brewers." So I showed up. I got to meet all these Berliner Weiss brewers. They told me about their process. I was like, "This is great." And then he gave me all these great places to go and things to check out. So I went down to Goslar, where Goza is from, and spent a couple days wandering about, and I went to their museum and talked to people there and tasted the Goza, the river water, and then went on to Leipzig. And so the Ona Bedenken that this guy's opened is still there.
Oh, wow.
They both passed away, but the pub is still there. And I went into the pub, and it's kind of on the outskirts of Leipzig. I had to take a train and walk in the dark and got lost. And I got there and went in, and in my bad German, ordered, food and a beer, and there were these two older guys sitting at the table next to me. And when they got up to leave, one of them said in English, because it was that obvious that I didn't speak German, they said, "So, what do you think of the beer?" And I said to him, "Wow, I like this beer. I came all the way from California to have this beer." He said, "Oh, well, I'm the brewer."
Oh wow.
I know.
Talk about luck on luck on luck. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't even know that they had a brewery. And they had just opened it like 6 months ago. They'd started brewing a beer again there, Goza again. And he went back and he showed me the brewery, and we tasted some beer from the fermenter. And he's like, "Tomorrow I will take you to the other Goza breweries." And so I met him in the morning, and he took me around. He knew all the brewers. It was just great.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And he'd been a home brewer, and he went into the Ona Bedenken a lot. And the chef one day, who was their kind of brewmaster, said, "You're a hobby brewer, and you're retired. You want to come help me brew beer here?" And that's how he kind of got the job as one of the brewers there.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Great guy, Edgar Schmidtke.
Yeah.
And
great timing.
Yeah.
awesome timing. And he spoke enough English that he could understand what I was saying. And his German, of course, was very good. So he could communicate with all the brewers and ask them brewing questions.
Right. Relay that back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like my dream of going to like a foreign country, like exploring this culture, but just getting chauffeured around by like the guy that you need to know there. That's like a pretty ideal travel situation. That's great.
Oh yeah, I was super lucky.
Yeah, that's good.
So if people want to know more about Goza, where can they find the book?
Well, the Brewers Association sells it. They can write me. I'll mail them one. I have a Venmo account.
Your personal address is
No. They can email me at the brewery.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, but really the BA, it's on Amazon. You can find it. Just if you type in Goza and my name, the book will pop up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show. It's a great style of beer, and it's a great book, and it's something that kind of tells this really good historical story about a product that kind of went extinct and came back. And I know Andrew and I are both really big fans of historical beers, and kind of trying to reinvigorate those a little bit. So thanks for all the detective work that you had to do, and for
now are there more historical brewing style books in your future, or are you?
I don't know. That may be
one and done.
Nah, it's my second beer book, and I don't know if there's a third one in me. But there are a lot of great beer styles out there, and I think I would love to see more of them. I'm really excited that Benedict's writing the Berliner Weiss book, because that was a style that almost went extinct.
Well, in Chicago Free Press it's a Sati book. It's coming out in June.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that. We do a lot of playing with Satis at Intrepid.
And there's a dark lager book that just came out from Horst Dornbusch, and Thomas Weierman, of Weierman Malting.
Yeah.
And I just bought that today. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a good time to be a brewer.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Lots of information.
When you run out of beers to make, you either make a new style or you dig into the archives and dig something up that's been extinct.
Yeah.
But there's a wealth of information out there. You know, it's a good time to brew beer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Fal, thanks again so much for coming on the show.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
It's
enjoy the
been
rest
fun.
of your time here in Denver. Hopefully the
you.
weather improves for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not today, but tomorrow. And, yeah, hopefully we'll have you back on in the future next time we're around.
All right. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And you guys, if you ever in Northern California, please come and visit.
I'm going to
Yeah,
knock on
absolutely.
your door. You're going to regret inviting us, but I'm going to be there someday.
Yeah, we'll bring the whole film crew.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of visitors, so I won't regret it.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you so much.
All right.
so much.
Thank you.
All right. So, again, you're watching Beer Craft, Colorado's craft beer show. We're going to keep rolling live at Former Saint during the Craft Brewers Conference and Brew Expo America 2019. We've got a couple of great brewers coming on next. Zac Rissmiller from 1623 Brewing and Kevin McCrossin of the soon-to-be Counterculture Brewery and Grille, if I can get Kevin's attention. He's busy drinking and talking
beer, but we're going to get him on at some point.
When you're opening a brewery, you're just like selling all the time.
Got to sell.
All the time.
Yeah, and like even people that don't want to be sold, they're like, "Have you heard about the brewery that I'm opening?"
I don't drink alcohol. It doesn't matter if I tell you about it.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. So so this month we've been talking a lot about the state of craft beer. That's been the theme of Beer Craft for the month. So last week we got to talk to Bart Watson, the chief economist at the Brewers Association. Earlier today we got to talk to Charlie Papazian, sort of about where craft beer has come from and maybe where it's going, and Fal Allen from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Right? And now
Now we got some
1623, some East Coast.
Some Baltimore,
Yeah.
Maryland
And some
brewery.
counterculture, some
absolutely.
no coast, and
Central Coast.
yes, some Central Coast.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited. I feel like we're getting the full picture.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big. That's
American
the
beer.
thing I kind of realized when we talked to Bart the other week was like it's a big country, and the industry is vastly different in different pockets of it. Right. He kind of talked a lot about the hot spots, the Denvers, the Portlands, and then he talked about kind of the up and coming areas, the Southwest, New York. He talked about that a little bit. And a lot of it's driven by, consumer demand, but it's also driven by the legislation, by what laws are there in that state that are driving how you can sell beer to your customer. So I definitely want to get into that a little bit here. I know Zac has just dealt with a couple issues about some recent laws that just got changed or amended. So we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, Zac, let's bring you on. Kind of tell us a little bit about 1623. What kind of beers do you guys make, and where are you at? How long have you been at it for?
Yeah, so we're going to be opening in Eldersburg, Maryland, which is just outside of Baltimore, but we've been contract through Duke for about 6 months now. It's based on our name. It's 1,623 miles between Denver and Maryland. And so I still live in Denver. I still love Denver.
Long commute.
Never
so
leaving
I
Denver.
just always assumed that in 1623 CE, something momentous in beer happened.
Yeah, well,
But I'm a historian.
Must have happened.
So that's
what
like
it
my
was.
default setting when I see four numbers.
But a lot of people think that it's a date, and so this guy went on this like quest to figure out what 1623 was. Turns out it's the same year that Virginia passed its first temperance law.
Oh, okay.
So he thought, yeah, way to go, way to fly the flag in the face of
thumbing
temperance.
your nose in 17th century temperance laws.
Yeah, I was like, no, man.
How edgy.
Absolutely. But, yeah, I mean, we make a lot of German beers. Two of our core beers are Hefeweizen and Pilsner, which I've won awards for here in Colorado. And then we have a stout, and, of course, you have to have an IPA. So we brought...
Legally, I think that's one of those laws we're going to get into, is that you legally have to have an IPA.
Legally have to have an IPA.
Passed
So,
in 1623.
Yeah.
so we brought West Coast to East Coast. So we're doing a West Coast IPA on the East Coast, and it seems to be going really, really well. People are starting, especially on the East Coast, starting to kind of back away from that. They're not like leaving it for sure, but they're starting to enjoy that West Coast. So that pendulum's kind of coming back a little bit again.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
Nice. It's all the styles. It's all cycle.
Yeah.
Back to Goza, back to West Coast IPAs.
Yeah, I think
Back to steam beer next. I don't know. We'll
yeah, and it's always different styles will swing a little bit past the center point before they, fall in the middle there. I think IPAs or at least hazy IPAs are definitely swinging pretty hard.
Oh, absolutely.
But they're working their way back. But Kevin McCrossin with Counterculture, right here in Denver, brewery in planning, in build out right now. You're planning to open really soon. Hopefully soon. I think, Jay, we need a little microphone action on Kevin here. Should be good
Really
now.
soon.
Really
Yeah.
soon.
Oh,
Like
I heard
tomorrow
that.
soon?
Yeah.
Not quite that soon.
Okay. Can we get a date?
No,
Okay.
I'm not giving out dates right now.
Good
I made the
idea.
mistake of doing that last week. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Before I move on to Counterculture, Eldersburg, Maryland, I know a guy who owns a tap room in Eldersburg, Maryland.
Who?
Oscars.
Oh, Oscars? Yeah.
Mark O'Leary?
Yeah, we've been on Oscars a couple times, yeah.
Speaking of how
Yeah.
big this country is and how small it can get, I work with
Yeah.
Mark O'Leary at the Dogfish at Ale Houses in Gaithersburg in Virginia.
Yeah, we call it Smaltimore.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And Eldersburg just struck a chord. It was too funny, yeah.
Oh, that's great, man.
Good
Yeah,
to meet
Oscars
you.
is a great place. Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Look at this. Beercraft bringing friends together
bringing it
since
together, huh?
2019.
But yeah, Counterculture looking to open early June. Like I say, I'm not putting a number to it just yet, but we are in construction, hitting those last inspections and figuring stuff out.
Cool.
But yeah, small kitchen, small brewery, looking to pour every drop of our beer into a glass as best we can. A couple of local accounts.
Yep.
I think the main thing we're trying to do is bring the kitchen into the brewery while maintaining that tap room environment and atmosphere.
Right.
There's not going to be a host at the front door to take you to your table and bring you your waters and a server to come by and first you get your appetizers, then you get your entrees. Eventually that experience ends and it's time to go. In tap rooms, it's not like that. You kind of sit down, you get a beer, maybe you get hungry, you have to go out to a food truck to order it. We're trying to be that food menu right there for you. We're going to operate a wood grill, do a handful of proteins off that wood grill, and then base our menu off of that. So at Dogfish in Gaithersburg and in Maryland or in Virginia, we operate it off a wood grill, and so it just kind of gives all your food a real signature flavor.
Yeah.
Makes the place smell incredible all the time. It smells like a campfire.
Yep.
And yeah, hoping to be open early June.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Where about are you? What neighborhood are you?
We are 7th and Sherman. It's 205 East 7th Avenue. I think technically it's like the almost southwest point of Cap Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. So we're talking to Bart Watson. He was giving us some numbers. 7,400 breweries, 10,000 brewing licenses registered with the TTB. You guys want to open more breweries. Sure. Talk to us about what the thinking is there. I mean, because like we said, it's different markets, right?
Sure.
It's Colorado, it's Maryland, it's California.
Yeah, and there's also different levels of the market. There's retail heavy, big production brewery. There's tap rooms. There's brew pubs. There's different regional players too. So, how do you? What's the business model like, really?
So I think we have opposite business models. So we're really heavy into distribution. We started in contract, and we're the fastest growing brand in the history of both of our distributors, who are over 100 years old. But we're just in Maryland. And so that's going really well for us, but we can't now step back away from distribution when we open our places because we've already done that. So we just want to have fun with it. Like, we're going to do some awesome things. We've got probably going to open 2 locations this year in Maryland. So
Nice.
yeah.
And will both of those? It sounds like one of them will be a production location.
Correct.
So you'll be doing. How big is the brew house that you'll be working with?
30 barrels.
30-barrel brew house.
Yep.
Cans or you guys are in cans, right?
Yeah, cans, yeah.
Yeah. So can sales out of there, and then the other location will be more of a tap room, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Tap room. Not
With a
allowed to
brewery?
say what it is, and yeah, it'll have a brewery in it, but I'm not allowed to say where it is or what it is. But yeah,
Nice.
it's a nice little surprise coming up.
Yes. Secret tap rooms.
Secret
Love
secret
a
tap
good
room.
surprise.
Yeah. And then Colorado. Well, we're close to 100 breweries in like the Denver metro area now, and almost I don't know, 4 million in the state of Colorado.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Something like that, I think, is the number.
It was 5 million.
Oh, okay, that's close.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what makes you guys different, or what makes you think that Colorado needs more craft beer?
Well, I mean, I would go so far as to say he's correct that, we are tied at two opposite ends of the scope there. I feel like drinking in general has become a much more neighborhood-focused thing. People don't want to have to go drive to get their beers. They want something that's local, that's in their neighborhood, they can walk to, that's a short drive to. They can build a relationship with the people who own the place and become kind of part of the ownership just by, being part of the regular kind of scene. So I feel like that will never stop growing. You go back to Prohibition and they say that how many breweries there were before, and then how it all kind of, like, we're on our way back there to where drinking is much more local. And people want to support their local businesses. So we're in a neighborhood with a handful of apartment buildings. We hope to have that be a very kind of central focus for us, that those become our people. Cap Hill, those of us that live in Denver know, is not great for parking. So we'll struggle there, but we really expect to have a lot of walking, foot traffic, a lot of people slowly driving through the neighborhood on their way home. We're going to focus on to-go beer and to-go food from a crowler and, clamshell perspective. Try to kind of support the local neighborhood in that way, just by having, people who come home from work twice a week on their way home to their apartment. They come into my brewery, grab a pint of beer, wait for their to-go food, get a couple of crowlers on their way out, and head home. And it's just part of their routine.
Yeah.
And I think that there's always room for good beer.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're making quality beer, you'll be able to find a place. It's if you're making subpar beer that's when things go awry. So, yes, it's crowded, but there is still room.
I think I agree. I mean, different business models, totally different regions can be completely successful in those respective regions. I think a lot of it depends on like the retail component, the retail interface between your customer, right?
Right.
If you're in distribution and there's room on the shelves for the type of product you're trying to produce, then that's great. If you're in a neighborhood that doesn't have a neighborhood spot, and I think Colorado's really big on supporting local businesses, local coffee shops, like farmers markets, supporting local agriculture, people enjoy that. And if there's something that they can get in walking distance to their house, then that's a great fit. But I love kind of the difference between those two, because they're two totally different sizes, right? 30-barrel brew house, probably some 60-barrel fermenters. Yep. And what size are you guys?
We're 10 hec.
A 10
it's about 8.5 barrel.
8.5 barrel, like typical brew pub size system, enough that you can keep the taps going on an on-premise type of.
We've got 6 servers. We're looking to grand open the place with just 6 beers. We're going to fill those servers and run. Small cooler. We don't ever expect to have more than 8 to 10 beers on draft. It's a brew pub license, so that'll give us the flexibility of having a guest tap if we need a hole filled in the tap wall. We don't have anything dark, and we just know we're not going to have it for 3 weeks. Well, then I can go to one of my buddies around here and just buy a keg of something dark. Right. If we don't have something light, same thing applies. I've been working in the Denver, brewery business for a while, so I know some friends, and I can always bring in. And I assure you, any beer we have on tap will, generally speaking, be somebody I know's beer.
Yeah.
And then have a cider for the gluten-free, and we're even considering because we have 14 taps, never expecting to have more than 10 beers on draft. We may very well put a white wine and a red wine on draft and just have that coming out of Sixtals.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous of that in brew pubs. I wish breweries, tap rooms could serve ciders and wines, and I would love to bring in that local stuff. I think that's super cool, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to really pair things and not just think about food, but think about the whole beverage experience.
There were a couple other additional hoops that we had to jump through.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying
a few more hoops to jump through.
It comes with its own set of problems.
For sure.
I won't deny you that.
Can I make you all jealous real quick? So in Maryland, our Class D license, we can serve beer and wine, which includes cider. So
sweet.
Nice. And you don't eat any food.
No.
So people can just get blacked out, drive home, good to go.
No, he's not.
No.
He looks a little more responsible.
Yeah, no, he's a good guy. You're a responsible guy.
I
You wouldn't let people
I don't
do
know
that.
about that, but it's fine.
You look very professional with that Vireman malt bag hat. I don't know where you got it from, but it's a nice hat.
From Thomas Vireman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did.
You steal it from his head?
No, he gave it to me.
It was a crazy
Yeah.
night at CBC last night.
Oh yeah, he's just stealing hats left and right, huh?
Good night, man.
I'll do another Maryland name drop. Do you know Jim Bachman?
I don't. Like, I still live here, and so I commute, like,
So
at
he's
least
in
once a
the
month,
Maryland
yeah.
Brewer Association. He used to
Okay.
work at Monocacy. He
Oh,
was
okay,
like the head
yeah.
sales guy and ran that company for
Right
a
on.
little while. And then he moved on to the Maryland Brewer Association, which I think is the Maryland Guild, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Brewers Association of Maryland,
Maryland,
or BAM.
So before
Which-
long, I'm sure you'll meet Jim
Hey.
Bachman. He's a good guy.
Hey, thanks for the segue. I'm
there you go.
actually going to be doing some pack duties coming up here pretty soon. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. The Brewers Association of Maryland has an unassociated political action committee, and
I'm pretty confident you're going to meet Jim Bachman then. During
Yeah,
that.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the law then, as we're going towards talking about the law. I mean, a lot of what drives the business decisions is the kind of the loophole, not the loopholes, all the hoops that you're talking about jumping through,
Yeah.
all the legal aspects of brewing beer. It's a very heavily regulated industry, and depending on how easy a certain state or municipality is to work with, that will kind of change what your business model is a little bit. And I know we were talking earlier today about some legislation that just went through in Maryland that sounds like it's going to help you guys a bit.
Yeah, well, we had some pretty impressive caps that got extended up. We had buyback provisions, like if we went over 2,000, I think it was 2,000 barrels in a given year, then we'd have to sell it to a distributor that has the land on their floor. They have to mark it up and sell it back to us, which just never made any sense to me. But a lot of those things have now changed. We had franchise law reform. All of this happened within a week's time.
Yeah.
And so Maryland is changing for the better right now, and it's we can't be more excited about it. That's why we went to Maryland, is because we felt like the laws were ripe to change, and the area was ripe for just having a great time in craft beer. So
Yeah, it's great to be on the kind of the forefront of that too, and kind of lead that change to make it more, because it's going to improve the industry as a whole, right? It's going to make more breweries thrive in that area.
I wish that I had any kind of input into all of these changes, but they're amazing.
Yeah.
And I can't be more proud of our guild, our Brewers Association of Maryland, and they did a very good job. Jana and Abby and everybody over there are just great people. So
It's crazy how much it varies from state to state. I was talking to a brewer from Las Vegas the other night, and he was saying that you can't have like a certain type of tap room license without like a gaming license. So like essentially you have to have like slot machines in your tap room in order to like have one. It's like really bizarre laws that are like super antiquated and just no one's done anything about them.
You can't have one of the vices if you don't have all of them.
Yeah, you got to have all the. I mean, this is Vegas we're talking about. All the vices or none of the vices.
It's required.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that a gaming license is super expensive.
Yeah, I think you have to know someone who knows someone whose uncle made concrete shoes for a living. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty lucky in the state of Colorado that we have very favorable laws that let us do a lot of.
Well, even that's, only over the last 10, 12 years that, the taproom laws have changed here in Colorado, and you've been able to do this taproom model without a kitchen. I mean,
Right.
you go back into the late 90s and early 2000s, that's what you did. You opened a brew pub.
Right.
Yeah.
That's if you wanted to make beer and not do production, you opened a brew pub.
Well, I think Colorado has honestly been a little bit behind the rest of the country in that respect, right?
In some ways.
We don't have a ton of brew pubs compared to the number of we're like misrepresented here, right?
Brew pubs.
2 brew pubs.
All
but
right.
it's like certainly not the demographic of Colorado, right?
Yeah, right,
But I
yeah.
think that's starting to change. There's been some brew pubs around for a long time, but we're starting to get a lot more.
A handful of the tap rooms are
Brew
starting
pubs.
to add kitchens because they feel like they need the revenues or they need the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some changes happening right now right here in Denver, and counterculture's trying to be at the forefront of that. We feel like putting a kitchen in a tap room is a good idea, and you don't necessarily need to do a full brew pub, restaurant, full bar style of service. Yeah. We're trying to kind of be the forefront of that change, and a lot of tap rooms are putting kitchens in. We're trying to put that kitchen up front and kind of set ourselves as the standard.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I mean, we're in the process of opening up our new location too, and have an extremely similar model of what the place is going to look like. It's going to be that taproom feel, that neighborhood taproom feel, but it's going to have food. You're not going to have servers who are taking your order. You're going to go up to a window and order your food and get your food when it's ready.
Right.
But there's something a little bit more, I don't know, it kind of has this communal aspect to it, right? It's a little more casual. You see these other businesses popping up, especially here in Denver, and I know I've seen them pop up in other cities too, these food halls, where it's one area, you go in, you grab a seat, some of them have self-service beer walls. You know, you get ID when you come in, you fill up your cup when you want, you go to the food vendor you want. If you want a cocktail, you go to the cocktail guy. You want sushi, you go to the sushi guy. You want Nashville hot chicken, you go to Nashville hot chicken guy. And it's just kind of this nice, easy, more casual way to get what you want on your terms and just focus more on who you're with and what's going on than having this grand restaurant experience.
Well, that's like I compare it to walking into a tap room where you go regularly. You walk in and you kind of just scan the room to see who's in there, which one of your regular buddies is in there, and you go grab a seat with them. You don't want to go get a table by yourself and wait for a server to come by, and you don't necessarily want to share tabs. That's what tap room kind of does, is everybody's on their own. Take a card, you know, and do you want some food? Well, step right over to the window. There's some food.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We're excited. We'll definitely be there in June. I'm feeling particularly excited. So Kevin used to work for us at Intrepid and, like, saved our lives more than once and got us open more or less on time. There's no such thing, I think, as opening on
There's
time.
still a flat version of me on their employee picture.
That's true.
I like that. I saw that. That was
we
great.
just put Kevin in. The ghost of Kevin passed.
Photoshopped me into it.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be there in June. But I think it's probably time to switch gears and think a little bit about kind of the future of craft beer, and we've got a couple more guests we need to get on here. So I want to thank Kevin, thank Zac so much for coming on the show.
Hey, good to meet you.
Yeah, glad we could help you guys
fun,
conduct
man.
some business. And
Eldersburg old school shit.
we'll look forward to when
Old
the
school
beer
stuff,
makes the 1,623-mile journey back this way to Colorado.
Yeah, 2021.
All right, good. Glad you're
thanks,
thinking about
guys.
it. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Great to have you guys on. Great
Thank
to
you,
chat
guys.
about breweries. Yeah.
Cheers.
All right, have a
Cheers.
good one.
All right. And next
who
up
else we have?
we've got Andrew Duval
Andrew
from
Duval
Resolute
from
Brewing is in the
Resolute.
house.
Nice.
And then I saw David Monahan walking around. I think he took a phone call, so we'll get him on here when he comes back in from the blizzard that is outside the window.
It's really starting to come down out there. If you're in the Denver area and you're looking for some refuge, hopping into former Saint here at the Hyatt across the street from the convention center, this is turning into a little snow globe here. We got the taps are flowing and the people are pouring in the door. This is it's going to get a little crazy here, I feel like, in the next couple of minutes. There's like a stream of like 30 people walking in right now.
Yes, if you are within the sound of our voice watching on Facebook, you should be watching live in former Saint, drinking beer.
Filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Live studio
audience. Anything could happen.
You don't know. Anything
we
could
hope it
happen.
doesn't.
With enough beer and enough people, anything could happen.
I mean, I'm banking. My first vote would be the kitchen erupting in like a fight or a fire. I hope it doesn't happen.
We'd be pretty close to that action if it happened.
Yeah, we're front row seats.
Good camera angle, definitely.
Yeah. So Andrew Duval from Resolute Brewing Company down in Centennial. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We're going to be your neighbors in a couple months.
And I can't wait.
It's going to be good, man. I'm very excited about it.
Congratulations on your
Thank you very much.
new home.
New home. It's a home in the making right now, but it's going to be a good home once it's made.
Yeah.
Beer helps with that.
Beer does help with most things.
Yeah, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're all making beer. And it's a little bit cathartic.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, again, we've been talking all month so far. It feels all week, all month, whatever day or month or whatever it is.
Wherever we
Yeah, welcome to Beercraft on April 47th, whatever day it is. About this, but we've been talking about the state of craft beer, and we've gotten to talk about sort of where craft beer has come from with Fal and Charlie, and where craft beer is with Bart, and I think a little bit of, about where it's going and where it's going all over the country. So I think it's great to have, Jeff here always on, but
thanks.
you're both sort of in the same position where you're here in Colorado, right? And you're opening new locations.
Yeah.
And you're growing in one of the hardest markets probably in the country in craft beer right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, let's just start venting.
Oh, okay. What don't you like? No, I think it's funny because Resolute and Spice Trade are this interesting case study because we're doing the old switcheroo. Like our brewery's in Arvada. We've been there for 11 years now. And our new location is going to be in Greenwood Village, a couple miles down the street from where you guys are in Centennial. And you guys are opening up a brand new barrel house tap room type of operation in Arvada. So we're kind of both opening up second locations, but in each other's backyard.
Yeah, the old Centennial switcheroo.
Yeah, classic.
But no, the taproom model. We're kind of talking about where does craft beer go from here. Well, you guys both know the distribution game is even more challenging than, especially in Colorado right now. So we've seen opportunity is to open another tap room in an emerging neighborhood, which is Candelas out there in Arvada. We got 2,100 homes that are going to be thirsty, and they're going to want a beer. And we've got more room to play with some barrels and play with some bugs. And hopefully, we do get some beer tourism out there too. But we're excited to be like the brewery of the neighborhood. There's literally nothing out there right now.
Right now, yeah, there's literally nothing. It's beautiful area though. We when we were expanding, we were looking in that area as well, and you have this beautiful kind of unobstructed view of the mountains in that area in West Arvada. It's almost like farmhouse-esque, reminiscent of kind of the view, and it's going to change obviously as the developments get put in. But I think it's a very wise business move if you're talking about the taproom model to find that untapped market, to find that market that doesn't have anything. You already have a proven tap room down in Centennial, and why not move that or expand that to Arvada?
And absolutely, and I mean, you're coming to an area that we saw a couple of years ago that still it's still underserved. And I mean, that's why you're coming down to Greenwood Village. I mean, there's a lot of people that are living and moving there and work there, and traffic's only getting worse. Coming back into Denver. So, people are like, I'm going to take the light rail and I'm going to have a beer before I go home, or I'm going to move closer to work so I don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half a day. Yeah. We're rocking the suburbs, both of us.
Yeah,
and I've said this a lot this week, but rising tide raises all ships. We kind of need more. We need solid breweries down there. We have a lot of awesome neighbors, but right now, I still think there's plenty of room for some new additions. As long as everyone's making quality beer and is on top of their game, and clearly you guys are.
Yeah, and that's something that Bart Watson from the Brewers Association talked a lot about when we chatted with him. He's like, there's still room for expansion, right? The definition of saturation is when every brewery that opens, one closes, and we're nowhere near that point right now. But it's getting closer to that balancing point, and it's important to be differentiated in the market that you're going to, and really have a good grasp on the business model that you're going for. So, I think that's just kind of goes to show you that even in a crowded marketplace, there is opportunity if you know where to look. I think. And there's some areas that are still growing. You think about areas like River North, right? Like Rhino, and it's got to be tough to operate any business in Rhino because, I mean, it's the destination for entertainment for sure. There's bars, there's restaurants, there's breweries, there's cideries, there's sake breweries. There's what?
Concert venues now.
There's concert venues. Yeah, there's roller skating rinks. There's all sorts of stuff in Rhino, and I love going there. But it's got to be tough from a business perspective to capture that drinker for more than one drink, to be more than just a stop on their tour.
Yep. And to become not a customer but a fan, as Bruce Dickinson would say from our keynote yesterday.
Oh yeah,
that's
I suppose he knows a little bit about fans.
A little bit, yeah. He told us all about them. It was pretty entertaining. But no, and I always feel a little overwhelmed just with information and ideas and obviously networking and events like this, like Craft Brewers Conference, GABF, anywhere where we're all getting together with people that we all pretty much get along with, and we all have a lot of amazing ideas, I get overwhelmed with excitement and almost sometimes like not a guilt, but like I know I'm not going to be able to capitalize on all of these.
Yeah.
And but I think a lot of the ideas and themes that I've heard throughout the week so far is our industry is evolving much. It's not oversaturated. It's evolved to the point where everyone's just really good at it. Not everyone, but the top dogs, the top 80% are really good at it.
Yeah.
And we're evolving and innovating and changing. We didn't rush to distribution. We've got another tap room now.
Right.
That's a moneymaker. That's not the oldest trick in the book. But no, I don't. My point is, it's getting saturated in talent too. So
Yeah, everyone's bringing their A game, right?
Yeah, I mean, good beer. I feel like it's interesting to me because the similar themes keep coming up throughout all of our conversations this month, and it's like good beer really just gets you a seat at the table now, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't set you apart,
yeah.
right? You just have to make good beer, and then it's everything else. It's the restaurant level of experience. It's that experiential factor that we were talking about last week, where it's like, what does the tap room feel like? Is there food? How far do I have to go?
Can you bring your dog?
Can you bring your dog?
Can I bring my kid? Can I bring
Looking
my
at you,
dog?
Denver County Health Department.
Yeah.
But so all these other factors start to play into it, and it takes really smart, savvy business people.
Yeah.
I think it's something we don't often like to talk about in the brewing industry. It's like, oh, we just all really love making craft beer, and it's like, we're running.
You're running a business.
You're running businesses.
Yeah.
You
Right?
gotta know your chops. I mean, you gotta. Also, I'm interested in the next 5 to 10 years how breweries are going to retain their employees. I mean, we are an industry that's kind of known for, we're not making the most money. The margins aren't. We all know the margins. They're rather thin.
Yeah.
And we have these extremely talented people in our generation that are continuing to get experience and really, are taking over the industry. Not taking over, but we're the new workforce.
Yeah.
I'm curious of how that will all go down and how much shakeout, people leaving the industry, or will the industry continue to evolve and compensate? And I kind of want to be an advocate for that.
I agree with you, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I've thought about it personally a lot, is like, how can you, like, you have these really motivated, really hardworking, really passionate people who are excited about the industry and what's going on, and how can you build a business that is successful and can compensate those people properly? It's a big problem. The beer industry is not known for being a glamorous or high-paying industry. It's a lot of hard work. I think people think you drink all day and hang out. I mean, luckily we're getting to do that today. But this is like we also
Smart ones tack that way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was also in my brewery half the day on Saturday making this beer to bring to this event, when it would be nice to have a day off, but that didn't happen. So, I mean, everyone's a hardworking person, and how can you make a business that's successful so everyone's happy and everyone's compensated for it? And I think a lot of it comes back to the consumer, too. Like, if you're used to paying these Anheuser-Busch price points for beer, then that's what you're used to paying, and you don't want to pay $6+ a pint of beer when you go to a bar.
Yep.
And it's kind of this customer mountain that we have to get over, to be like, hey, farmers markets are more expensive because there's a quality product, there's people making that, and it's a good product worth it. We need to make the craft beer consumer okay with some of those things also.
I think a small percentage of our customers, our fans, are in tune with that idea and the experience in our tap rooms.
Ooh, there's food.
Oh,
Food
right
has
on.
showed up. Thank you so much.
As well sometimes. Thank you. I think that in more developed markets such as ours, that is becoming the norm, and also it's expensive as all get out to operate a tap room in Denver.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I think some people are getting with it. I just was in a seminar about this, so
Lay it on us. Lay it on everybody who's listening who couldn't go to the CBC. What did you get out of that seminar?
it was about global trends.
Wow, we're getting a real spread
my
here. This
gosh.
is amazing. Thank you.
More bacon.
That's a cup.
chocolate-covered bacon?
Hold on a second. This is a cup of bacon. Can we get Jay? We got to get this cup of bacon close up. I've never seen a chocolate-covered bacon cup before, but
man.
I'm in heaven.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just
to us?
There
reaffirmed
you
my
go.
decision to go into the brewing
going for it.
industry.
Go for it.
This is all we do all the time.
This is our
pretty
lives.
much every day, and then they just write us checks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to chew into the mic.
Oh, that's okay. Well, we take turns chewing and drinking. That's what we learned on the show. Is if everybody tries a beer at the same time and they're all thinking about it and tasting it at the same time, it's just kind of like 15 seconds of awkwardness. So you kind of have to take turns. Like right now, I'm really taking one for the team. I want to eat this bacon more than you could possibly know, but I can't because you guys are eating the bacon. So
We're
you're
just
welcome.
going to let Jeff keep talking.
I took a bite. Yeah.
Hey, Jay Parker's here technically if you guys want to get into that bacon, and I just, I'll tell you about
you talk
a
about
guy
something
that
else.
tried
There
to
we go.
kill me last Thursday at the bar. Speaking of the bar business, a
Let's
guy
hear it.
tried to kill me. No, I'm not going to get. You guys are far more entertaining, but I will chime in a little bit just so you guys can eat a piece of bacon. But I wanted to touch on Jeff's point where he mentioned like the Anheuser-Busch price point and what people are. Here's the thing, man, and this is just my opinion, but it's an uphill battle because you're fighting percentages of statistics, right? And Anheuser-Busch is so big and they put so many commercials out there on TV and so often that it's literally just pounded into people's head that this is what good beer is, right?
Yeah.
So as the pendulum swings from educated people into craft beer, then craft beer numbers will go up and more people will fall off from Anheuser-Busch, right? But it's just one of those things where it's not going to change overnight, right? And it's not going to change in the next 5 years. All you can do is keep making good beer and keep educating people. With a show like this, Beer Craft, I mean, that's what you can do. You can educate people on why your pint's $6.50 versus a Budweiser that's $2 on happy hour. And it's like, listen, if you're a $2 Budweiser person, then so be it. I mean, whatever.
I agree with, and I think it's a point that Charlie made too when we just talked to him about this vision of an immovable object, right? Like when they were talking about craft beer in the 70s and in the 80s, he was like, you can't legally make beer at home. There were so many laws to prevent you from doing what you do. A lot of people were like, well, we can't do it. Like, I think it's kind of our generation's, immovable object that we have to work towards and just keep working towards and keep educating people and really advocate for that.
Until you have $1 billion, that's all you can really do.
Well, I mean, it's incumbent upon us too, as craft brewers, to really get out there and do the evangelism. And it's more than just whining about economies of scale, right? As accurate or as true as that might be, that doesn't win converts to the church of craft beer, if you will.
Yeah. Right, but what I'm saying is like as a small brewer and a craft brewer, you just have to accept the fact that those numbers exist and that and you're like, why do so many people still think that Budweiser is good beer or what? And it's because of money and numbers and if they just push it in your face all day long. I mean, it's why McDonald's still pays millions of dollars every year to advertise. Right? It's because they just shove it down your face all day, every day that eventually, statistically speaking, people are going to come around and buy that product because they see it all the time. And, I mean, let's not lie. I mean, Budweiser makes great commercials. Yeah. They make hilarious and great commercials, and they've got the money to just put it in your face all the time. Small brewers like you don't have that luxury, right?
I think the nice thing, though, with craft brewers and with social media is that it gives, social media is this blessing that gives us a direct connection to our customers for, almost no cost. Whereas in, 15 years ago, you had to be, doing TV commercials or billboards or some, print media advertising. And now you don't have to do that anymore because you have social media. You have a direct connection to your customer. Your customer can say, hey, I love this beer. And you can just message them and say, hey, thanks. Awesome. Yeah. Or they can say, hey, I had a problem with this one.
I mean, at the risk of, making Anheuser-Busch mad, they're welcome to come on the show and defend themselves.
Bring it.
But I don't see,
they're listening.
We're
always
listening. Can you imagine
sure they're
if they
listening.
paid attention to it? That'd be the biggest win in the world.
That'd be good to have them on. That'd be a good
Before I forget, I just want to play devil's advocate real quick to social media because social media can do just as much damage than it does good when somebody's dumb. And they go and they either make something up because Jeff looked at this guy's girlfriend while he's in the tap room, and so this guy goes on social media and goes and said. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like they could just go up there and blast your product on social media, whether it's validated or not. Yeah. And so that part is a frustrating.
It's definitely
thing.
a double-edged sword. I agree. I think you're talking about two sides of the same same coin as far as social media.
That's what I do.
Because
I
it's
talk
like
about the same sides of everything.
the difference is like we're breweries, right? That advertise. Budweiser is an advertising agency that happens to make beer, right? Like that's the difference.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's the big boy on the block that's why they're at the level that they are, and they've grown. And I hate to use them as a reference, and I'm just sharing in the frustration because I don't have a brewery, right? But I'm sharing in that frustration that I experience even though I don't have a brewery. But I get frustrated when I see those commercials, and I'm like, man, I know Andrew and Jeff and the other Andrew are out there, and they're making beer, and they're working hard, and they're doing everything, and they and then this guy can swoop in and do that because of dollars and cents, and because you just throw money at something and you get that percentage of return. So that's just 2 cents.
We're chipping away. I mean, that was one of the things we learned this week through CDC and through the BA is that that section of the margin,
it's shrinking.
Of beer is shrinking, and it's continuing to go to breweries like Resolute and Spice Trade, and
Intrepid Sojourner Beer Project,
and hopefully Intrepid, and so it feels sort of like wearing down a boulder with a toothbrush, to use an archaeology metaphor.
Yeah,
but
we're moving in the right direction.
But we're moving in the right direction.
That's good.
I think another theme that I'm taking away from this week. The infighting's not doing us any justice with the big guys on beer as a whole. The whole Coors or Miller Coors AB InBev fight right now over corn syrup.
Which is awesome, by the way. I mean, that's just fun to watch.
And on the same timeline, the beer industry was supposed to come together and have a Got Milk-esque beer campaign that spanning all beer. Because beer internationally in the world is down.
Yeah, they're down 1% this year.
Yeah, we've got White Claw, and we've got some healthy movements and moderation, but we also have a premium customer that's drinking less but spending more on a beer for $7 in our tap room or something like that.
Right.
But I think Budweiser's scared. They're shelling out all this money to come after us. They can't come after us individually or buy us all out.
Yeah.
Well,
they're trying.
They're trying, but we're 7,000 strong now, so we're.
And that's why, and I hate to keep interrupting, but that's why when I look at it and hear these conversations, it's like that small craft beer's biggest weapon is education. Yes. And trying to, as they put out another commercial, we do 3 more shows talking to people about what beer is.
I think we could have a whole episode talking about corn syrup and corn, because I mean, to be totally honest with you, and I'm sure all of you have before too, I've used dextrose before. I've used corn sugar before. Yep. Belgian brewers use.
Well, this is the last episode of Beer Craft, everybody.
But they're playing this game of high
anymore.
fructose, trying to make the consumer think about high fructose corn syrup as this negative thing. And you're right.
It was a misleader.
It's a misleading campaign that's only negative. And I think the more that, from an education point of view, like Jay just brought up, we can educate people on what is corn syrup. What is corn? What is corn sugar? Yeah. How is it used in the brewing process? Is there any left over by the time you're done? No. Does it matter you use it? No. Like there's a lot of there's a conversation.
Highlight some of the other adjuncts that get used by the big.
Yeah, like rice gets used, corn gets used.
And that's what Big Beer is doing is they know that the majority of the consumers aren't educated when it comes to beer and how beer is made and what's good and what's bad. And so they just make a commercial and they go, Coors uses corn syrup.
Yeah.
And they make it bad in the commercial. That's bad, even though you say as a brewer, well, maybe you can you use this and everybody does it, but the average consumer doesn't know that. And so if you it's like just telling somebody something. Yeah. 99% of the people will believe what you tell them because you told it to them.
We have it is, and we have the tap. This is what kind of getting back to what we were talking about with Kevin about the tap room, right?
Right.
That's the front line, in my opinion, for education to the consumer.
Right, and I mean, you routinely see the surveys that are like, what do people care about in tap rooms? And like usually number 1 or 2 is how educated are the people behind the bar serving
how
you your
friendly
beer.
and educated, and that's how we can win the small battle. I mean, we educate our staff, we hire staff and train them properly. We encourage them, that culture to spread throughout all your new hires,
right?
And win fans.
Yeah,
I keep saying that.
All right.
Yeah.
But those people are going to go home and tell their Joe Sixpack Budweiser friend, how corn syrup is not a big deal.
And if you have somebody just yelling at you from behind a TV screen about corn syrup, and then you have somebody that you have a personal relationship with explaining to you technically how it works, it's much more valuable to have that conversation with someone than it is to just hear someone yelling at you over the TV.
I think Jay's point is Jay's frustration is, part of the reason why we're out there doing that education, because, bar managers are frustrated, bartenders are frustrated, and craft beer can do it better.
Yeah. And I mean, I won't dwell on this, but I liken it to kind of I'm not going to get too far into politics, but our political state where you like what about or whateverism. Budweiser just said that, and it caused this stir, and we're still talking about it 3 months afterwards.
Yeah.
The ripples from that have affected a lot of things, and it was a misleading statement.
Right.
And if the general public was educated on beer, it would have been over by the morning. So
the good thing is, like, most people that I interact with, and we do a ton of beer festivals. We do a lot of. We try to get out to our consumer as much as we can. And the thing that I'm always excited about is when I meet someone and they're like, "Oh, why is this?" And you get to talk to them and you have a conversation, and they're like, "Wow, I like that's great. I learned that. I'm excited about this." Like, when you have those interactions with people, you realize that people, they want to learn and they want to understand it. They might not just want to have someone yell something in their face and take it at face value.
I think everybody should just have to take a home brewing course in high school.
Before you can drink beer?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then after that, you have
Get
2
your,
years
like,
of bartending. I know Jay would be behind
Yeah,
that.
that'll fly, teaching kids how to make beer in school.
Yeah.
Andrew's got my vote.
2 years of home brewing service.
You got to keep working on the Mai Tai, Timmy. It's a little weak.
Hey, here's an idea, and this might be the craziest thing in the world, right? But so let's say the big beer, the cheap lager that everybody. Could a small craft brewery make a cheap lager like that and still maintain their dignity and respect to where they could drop the price down to something? I mean, listen, there's always going to be the $2 PBR guy. Yeah. Right, that's all he's ever going to drink. That's all he wants. It's like he might drink a nice spice trade brew or an Intrepid Sojourner brew or Resolute brew and go, you know what, that's delicious. But when I'm paying for it, I'm going to get the $2 bill. Sure. Can a small brewer make a cheaper version of that lager?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, a small brewer can make a good, easy drinking lager. We make a great lager. There's a ton of breweries that make good, easy drinking lagers, but the economies of scale that you get when you are Coors make it impossible to compete 100% on price. And so there's kind of this aspect of, if you want to support a local business and a small business, you have to be okay with spending a little bit more money because it costs that business more to make what they're making for you. Yep. So
right. So I get, as my brain that somebody that doesn't own a brewery, I go like, well, why can't you use the same ingredients? And so like the answer to somebody that's listening that goes, yeah, man, because I don't own a brewery either. It's like, well, we can. But we're not making 9 million gallons at a time,
right? My malt
which
costs,
is the difference.
My malt costs 70 cents a pound versus Coors, which is 2 cents a pound. Right. They make it themselves.
They come back to this
they have a $1 million
economies of scale
contract
right.
per year.
Right. Okay.
And they own the farms and
that's actually
they own the malting facilities. They own the distribution networks.
Right.
And all of that drives down
everybody
the cost.
who would take a cut in your raw ingredients from grain to glass. They own all of it, and so they can absorb all that.
It's like Outback Steakhouse having their own ranches and cattle, and so they're using their own meat versus buying it from somebody else.
You're providing the
That's
supply
why
chain.
that Bloomin' Onion's only $12.99.
So they got their own onion ranches.
They got the onion ranches.
I haven't had a Bloomin' Onion since
it's
2006.
Oh,
you remember the year?
Oh, I got vicious blooming onion food poisoning on my 18th birthday.
Oh, man.
Not to defame.
I don't want to defame them either, but I also got very sick the last time I had it. So
Andrew,
that's 2 data points.
Thank you so much for coming on Beercraft.
Thanks for having me.
It's been so good to have you on.
Oh,
man.
Oh, no.
Cheers.
You do have a tap right now.
There is a
You
tap
don't have
right
to walk
here.
Too far.
Okay, here we go. Try this again.
You could cross bacon.
There we go.
Yeah,
we'll do it one more time.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
So,
Everyone drink it once.
Cheers.
We'll all have a sip, and we'll all keep talking. I'll keep talking while you guys sip.
I got through it.
A moment of silence for the future of craft beer.
No, it's positive.
It's going to be great.
We're wearing
It's
shades,
going to be a
man.
moment of reflection.
That's
right. A moment of reflection. It's going to be good.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
This has been a great show.
Cheers.
two shows today.
Yeah, we
Feels
did.
Like
we had a marathon. It's like
Yeah.
it's almost the whole day we've been doing this, and it's been great. We've talked to a lot of great people. We've talked about the state of craft beer across the country. We've gotten into the weeds about bigger breweries, smaller breweries, price points. You know, a lot of interesting stuff. And I think the takeaway is craft beer is growing. There's room to grow if you're doing it methodically and you're thinking about who your customer is and you're putting out a good product. And I think all craft brewers have to do a lot of continuous work on education and really just focusing on putting out quality products and teaching people about what they're making.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're going to keep bringing you beer craft shows. We're going to keep educating you and us as we get to move through this sort of landscape of craft beer. We are changing the show time.
Yeah, so for everybody who's used to slacking off on Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m., you're going to have to switch to slacking off Mondays at 4.
Yes.
So we're switching the show next week. It's going to come on Mondays at 4. Every week after that, we're going to do Monday at 4. It's really just to help you guys get over kind of the weekend blues. So we're going to make you slack off on Monday, and it's going to be better for everyone.
So we'll be back in the studio kitchen, home of the Modern Eater Network, on Monday.
Yep.
We've been coming at you live from the beautiful former Saint. Just want to say thank you again for this wonderful spread, this beautiful space, this warm room to sit in while we watch the blizzard outside. I'm Andrew Moore from Intrepid Sojourner Beer Project. Jeff Tyler from Spice Trade Brewing, and we'll see you on Monday.
Cheers.